Years from now, people will still talk about the day Barack Obama faced Donald Trump in his own office and left him speechless. That morning, the air inside the White House felt different, heavier, still. It wasn't the kind of silence that brought peace, but the kind that made your chest tighten. Security guards stood straighter, staff whispered in corners. Every footstep echoing through the marble halls seemed to carry a warning something important was about to happen. Inside the Oval Office, the president's chair faced the window, sunlight spilling over its polished surface. Donald Trump sat there, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the door. He had personally called for this meeting. On paper, it was supposed to be a serious discussion about national policy direction and unity. But everyone knew that wasn't the real reason, because the man walking into that office was Barack Obama, the one person who had publicly humiliated Trump years ago with nothing more than a few jokes and an unshakable smile. Now, Trump had the power, the title, and the room. And for a man like him, that meant one thing: it was time to settle the score. The large clock on the wall ticked once, then again. Tick-tick, the sound echoed like a heartbeat. The doors opened. Barack Obama stepped in, calm, steady, measured. The same slow, confident walk that had once filled stadiums with applause now carried him across a room charged with tension. He wore his familiar half-smile, not forced, not fake, just polite, the kind that said, "I see what's happening here, but I won't let it shake me." Trump stood up, extending his hand. "Barack," he said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mr. President Obama," replied, shaking his hand firmly. His tone was respectful, but his posture said everything. This wasn't submission, and it definitely wasn't fear. For a brief moment, the two men just looked at each other. The room went still again. If you could bottle tension, that moment could have powered the entire White House. Staff members stood quietly along the walls, avoiding eye contact, pretending to be invisible. No one even dared to breathe too loud. Trump gestured to the chair across from him. "Have a seat," he said. Obama nodded and sat down. A folder lay in front of him. Neat, organized, color-coded tabs marking topics like economic reform, foreign policy, and education. He had come ready to talk about the nation's future. But Trump had something else in mind. The small talk didn't last long. "How's Michelle?" Trump asked casually. "She's doing well," Obama answered evenly, still inspiring people everywhere she goes. Trump nodded, leaning back in his chair. "That's good. That's good." There was a pause, the kind that drags on just a little too long. Then came the smirk. And just like that, the real conversation began. "You know," Trump said, his voice dripping with forced charm, "I still get letters about your birth certificate. People really wonder about that, don't they?" The room froze. Every staffer's eyes darted to Obama. There it was, the move everyone feared, or maybe expected. Trump had revived the one topic that started it all: the false birther conspiracy, the claim that Obama hadn't been born in the United States. Obama didn't blink, not once. He simply sat there, fingers interlaced, expression calm. His eyes met Trump's, not with anger, but with quiet certainty. The silence stretched. Trump's grin widened, waiting for a reaction, but Obama just leaned back, exhaled softly, and said, "You're still on that." That simple line cut sharper than any insult. Trump chuckled, pretending not to be fazed. "Hey, I'm just saying what people are saying. You know how it is. I hear things." Obama nodded slowly, then reached into his folder. He pulled out a neatly folded document and slid it across the table. His birth certificate, the same one released years ago. "There it is again," he said lightly. "You can check it as many times as you need to, The paper hasn't changed. Trump's smile flickered just for a second. It was small, but noticeable, like a crack in the mask. The silence returned. Tick, tick, tick. The clock seemed louder now. Obama didn't say another word. He just sat there, composed. The tension now belonged to Trump. For the first time since the meeting began, he looked unsettled. He straightened his tie, cleared his throat, and forced another grin. "Well," he said, "I guess that settles it then." Obama's voice stayed calm. "It's been settled for years, Donald." That tone, steady, certain, unshaken, had a power all its own. It wasn't loud or aggressive, but it carried something stronger control. Trump shifted in his seat. The energy in the room had shifted too. What was supposed to be a show of dominance was starting to look like something else entirely. A man trying to win a game the other refused to play. No one spoke. Outside, the wind rustled the American flag. Inside, the silence felt heavier than ever. Obama looked around the room at the paintings of past presidents, the stacks of briefing papers, the clock still ticking. Then he turned back to Trump and said quietly, "So are we ready to discuss the nation's future?" Trump hesitated. His confidence flickered again, replaced by something uncertain. He hadn't expected this kind of calm resistance. He hadn't expected Obama to walk in and hold the room without raising his voice once. That was the thing about Obama, he didn't need to shout to be heard. His calmness was his power. And as the clock struck the next minute, everyone in that room knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a meeting anymore. This was a chess match between two very different kinds of strength. And the next move was about to change everything. The moment Barack Obama settled deeper into his chair, the atmosphere shifted again. Gone was the polite stiffness of formal greetings. Now there was only tension, thick, invisible, pressing down on everyone in the room. Trump leaned back, tapping his fingers lightly on the armrest. Eyes locked on Obama, like a man studying his opponent before striking. He smiled a slow, confident grin people had seen 1,000 times before, the kind that usually came right before something controversial. Obama noticed it. He'd seen that look before on TV screens, debate stages, press conferences. He knew something was coming. Trump tried a little small talk. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he said, glancing toward the window. "It is," Obama replied politely. But Trump wasn't talking about the weather. His tone had a sharp edge, like he was warming up for something. Then, without warning, he leaned forward. Elbows on the table, his smile vanished. "So tell me, Barack," he began. Voice suddenly serious. "Are we sure you were even born here?" The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Every sound seemed to vanish. Even the faint hum of the air conditioner disappeared behind those 7 words. Across the room, an aide stopped writing. Another looked down at the floor. Obama didn't move, not even a twitch. Trump pressed on, sensing the silence. "You know, a lot of people still wonder about that. I mean, there are questions. People come to me all the time and say, 'Mr. President, are we really sure about Obama?'" He chuckled softly, pretending it was casual. But everyone knew this was no casual comment. This was Trump's first real move, and everyone in the room felt it. He wasn't asking. He was provoking. Years earlier, that very rumor, the false birther theory, had helped launch Trump into political headlines. It claimed Obama wasn't born in the United States, that he wasn't truly American. Even after it was proven false, even after the documents were shown, some people still repeated it. And Trump had been one of the loudest voices behind it. Now, with Obama sitting just a few feet away, he was bringing it back right to his face. Obama finally looked up, his expression. Unreadable eyes, calm, steady, piercing. "Still on that," he said softly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Calm, controlled, heavy with meaning. Trump blinked, caught slightly off guard by how relaxed Obama seemed. He leaned back, spreading his arms. Hey, I'm just saying what people are saying. I hear things. People talk. They always talk. Obama didn't respond right away. He took a quiet breath and opened the folder he'd brought. Inside were papers, charts, notes, but one document stood out. He pulled it out slowly, unfolded it, and placed it on the table between them. His birth certificate. It wasn't for show. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to raise its voice. There it is, Obama said evenly. Signed, sealed, verified. You can read it again if you like. Trump stared at it for a few seconds, then gave a short laugh. Well, I guess that clears it up. Maybe. He said it playfully, but his voice carried an edge, a tiny crack of irritation. Obama smiled faintly. There's no maybe, Donald. There never was. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The silence was deafening. Everyone in the room could feel the tension two men used to being the center of attention, neither willing to back down. Trump picked up a pen and tapped it against the table. You know, he said, slowly. Some presidents spend a lot of time talking. I like to get things done. Big difference. There it was, the next jab. Disguised as a compliment, Obama's lips curved into the faintest smile. Doing things, he replied quietly, is easy. Doing the right things. That's the hard part. The words hit like lightning. Trump stopped tapping. The pen clattered softly onto the desk, the only sound in the room. For a few seconds, time felt frozen. Even the Secret Service agents outside could probably feel the tension radiating through the walls. Trump broke the silence first. Well, he said, forcing a laugh, you always were good with words. Obama didn't answer. He just looked at him, calm, measured. Steady. It wasn't arrogance. It was control. That's what unsettled Trump most. He had expected fire, anger, a fight. Instead, he got calmness, confidence, silence that said, you can't shake me. It threw him off balance. Trump leaned forward again, trying to regain control of the moment. You know, Barack. He said, his tone sharp but steady. When I think about my presidency and yours, I realize we had very different styles. I liked to be bold. You liked speeches. Obama looked up, calm as ever. Maybe he said with a quiet shrug. But words can build bridges or burn them. You choose which ones to build. Another silence. This one was longer, heavier. Trump shifted in his chair, suddenly uncomfortable. It was clear now his opening move had failed. The man he'd tried to humiliate hadn't taken the bait. Instead, Obama had turned the attack into a mirror one Trump didn't want to look into. And deep down, Trump knew the meeting wasn't going the way he planned. Because in that moment, Barack Obama wasn't defending himself. He was reminding everyone in the room, and maybe Trump himself, that power doesn't come from shouting the loudest. It comes from standing your ground without losing your calm. The first round clearly belonged to Obama. The air in the Oval Office felt heavier now. Trump had thrown his best punches, but none landed the way he expected. Obama sat quietly, his fingers resting on the table, gaze steady and unreadable. That calmness was getting under Trump's skin. He cleared his throat, shifted in his chair, searching for another jab that might break the silence. But before he could speak again, Obama leaned forward slightly. It was a small movement, almost casual, but perfectly timed. Donald, he said in a low, measured tone, you and Ivanka have a son, right? The question sliced through the quiet like a blade. Every head in the room lifted. Even the aides along the wall looked up startled. Trump froze. For the first time since the meeting began, the confidence in his expression flickered. What's that supposed to mean? He asked sharply. Obama didn't rush to answer. He let the silence work for him, the way only someone in full control can. Then he said slowly, it means before you question my background, maybe think about what kind of example you're setting for yours. Trump blinked, clearly caught off guard. He'd come prepared to fight about documents and politics, not family. The shift threw him completely off balance. He forced a laugh. Barack, we're not here to talk about family. Let's stay professional. Obama didn't smile. Professional, he repeated softly. That's interesting, because professionalism starts with respect, something you keep forgetting. The words hung in the air like smoke. Obama's tone was calm, but there was weight behind it, a quiet authority that didn't need to shout. Trump leaned back, trying to recover his rhythm. You're twisting this around, he snapped. But Obama shook his head slowly. No, I'm reminding you that leadership isn't about insults and conspiracies. It's about truth, and I've got the truth written down, every word, every record, every fact. Trump narrowed his eyes. You threatening me now? Obama met his gaze without blinking. I'm giving you a choice, he said evenly. You can keep twisting things, or you can stop before this gets embarrassing for you. The room went completely silent again. No one dared move. One of the staffers near the door looked down, pretending not to hear. Trump's breathing grew heavier. He tried to laugh again, but it came out strained. Embarrassing for me. Please. Obama leaned back, hands clasped. You're the one bringing up rumors that died years ago. But if we're reopening old stories, he said, his voice steady, I can bring up some of yours too. Trump's face reddened. You wouldn't. Obama tilted his head slightly. Try me. For a second, it looked like Trump might explode. His voice rose, echoing through the room. You're out of line. You don't come into my office, but... Obama's calm voice cut through the noise like a cool wave over fire. I'm in this office because I earned it once, and I'm here today because I was invited. That sentence landed harder than any shout could. Trump's words faltered. The anger drained from his tone, replaced by something quieter, defensive. You think you're better than me? He asked. Obama looked at him for a long moment before replying. No, he said finally. I think I understand something you still don't. Trump frowned. And what's that supposed to be? That power isn't about proving you're right, Obama said. It's about knowing when to stop proving anything at all. The silence that followed was almost painful. Even the ticking clock sounded louder, echoing through the Oval Office like footsteps in an empty hallway. Obama's words had shifted the energy completely. He wasn't arguing anymore. He was teaching. And that made Trump look smaller. Trump reached for his glass of water, but his hand trembled slightly as he lifted it. He took a sip, trying to hide it. Obama continued his tone, never rising. When you lead with anger, you lose control. When you lead with truth, you never have to raise your voice. Trump set the glass down with a sharp click. Don't lecture me, Barack. I'm not, Obama said simply. I'm reminding you. Then for the first time he leaned back with the faintest smile. Not smug. Just sure. Remember, Donald, he said quietly, you're not the only one who keeps records. I have documents too. If I ever need to prove a point, I won't need rumors or noise. I'll use facts, and they'll speak louder than any tweet or headline. The last word hit hard. Trump's jaw tightened. He didn't like being warned, especially not like that. But what could he say? Every time he tried to twist the moment, Obama brought it back to calm truth. Every insult bounced off him like rain on glass. It was clear now Trump had wanted a fight. Obama had given him something worse, a mirror. And what Trump saw in that mirror wasn't strength. It was insecurity, pride, and fear. Fear that someone else could take control of the room without shouting once. A silence lingered again, stretching into seconds that felt like minutes. Finally, Trump looked away, pretending to glance at a stack of folders on his desk. He mumbled something about getting back to real business, but his voice had lost its edge. Obama nodded politely. "Sure," he said. "Let's talk about real business, suppose. The kind that helps the country, not egos." Trump didn't respond. He only straightened his papers. Eyes fixed anywhere but on the man sitting across from him. And in that moment, the power in the room shifted completely. Obama didn't have to win with numbers or arguments or titles. He'd won by staying calm, while the other man unraveled. That was the real counterattack. Not shouting, not threats. Just quiet control, the kind that makes everyone else realize who's truly in charge. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Trump had started the meeting thinking he could humiliate Barack Obama. Instead, he was the one struggling to hold his composure. And as the clock ticked on, the air told the truth before anyone said a word. Round 2 belonged to Obama. The Oval Office was thick with silence. Not the calm kind, but the heavy, uneasy kind that clings to the air. Trump sat stiffly in his chair, jaw-tight eyes flicking toward the floor for just a moment before snapping back up. Obama hadn't moved an inch. Still seated, still composed, almost too calm for the tension in the room. That calmness unnerved Trump. It wasn't arrogance, it was control. And that control made him furious. "You think you can come here and talk down to me?" Trump said, his voice cracking just slightly. "I'm the president now." Obama looked at him steadily. "I know you are," he said quietly, "and that's exactly why you should act like one." Trump blinked, caught between anger and disbelief. "What's that supposed to mean?" Obama leaned forward just a little. "It means stop turning everything into a fight. Stop dragging people through the mud just to make yourself feel taller." He paused, tone firm, but never loud. "You brought up my birth certificate again, Donald, after all these years." Trump crossed his arms. "People have a right to ask questions. They do." Obama agreed calmly. "But you didn't ask questions, Donald. You started rumors. You built a stage on lies and made the whole country watch. And now you're doing the same thing again. The target just keeps changing." Trump opened his mouth, but Obama didn't let him speak. "You've twisted the truth so often that even the people who once believed in you are starting to wonder what's real anymore." That hit hard. Trump's fingers drummed on the desk, searching for a comeback. But his usual weapons mockery deflection noise didn't work here. Obama straightened his tie slightly, then spoke again, his voice steady and low. "You mentioned my background earlier," he said, "but maybe you should remember people haven't forgotten about yours either." Trump narrowed his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I'm talking about the people closest to you," Obama said, "about how the choices you make affect them." Then came the words that made every person in the room hold their breath, especially your daughter Ivanka. Trump stiffened. His whole body went still. "Leave her out of this," he said instantly, voice sharp and defensive. Obama didn't back down. "I wish I could," he replied calmly. "But you brought her in long before I ever mentioned her name. You gave her a desk in the White House. You let her make policy calls. She's not just your daughter, Donald. She's part of your administration." Trump shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable. "You don't get to talk about my family." Obama's tone stayed quiet, but powerful. "Donald, I don't want to talk about your family," he said. "I want to talk about responsibility. Because when you bring family into power, their actions and your words about them become part of the story." Trump frowned, clearly not following where Obama was going. Then Obama delivered the line that hit like thunder. "You remember what you said about her once on television?" Trump's face flushed red. "That was years ago." Obama nodded slowly. "It was. But words don't disappear, Donald. They stay. People remember." His gaze didn't waver. "They remember when you said, 'If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.'" The room went dead silent. Trump's aides looked away. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Obama let the words hang there. No follow-up, no explanation. Just silence. The kind of silence that forces reflection. The kind that makes a man face his own echo. Trump's voice finally broke through the silence, shaky but loud. "That's not what I meant. It was a joke. You're twisting my words." Obama didn't react. He didn't smirk, didn't gloat. "That's what you always say," he replied softly. "Every time the truth gets uncomfortable, it's a joke. Every time facts surface, it's someone else's fault." Trump's hands clenched into fists. "You think you're perfect. You think you can come in here and lecture me." "No," Obama said quietly. "I'm not perfect. But I learned something in that chair you're sitting in." He paused. The air felt thick still. "Leadership isn't about being perfect," he continued. "It's about being honest. It's about owning your words before they own you." Trump fell silent. He looked like he wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Obama stood slowly. The movement was calm, deliberate. He buttoned his jacket eyes, never leaving Trump. "I came here for a discussion about the country," he said. "But instead, I got the same circus you've been running since day one." Trump pushed himself up too, almost as if his pride forced him to. He extended a hand across the table. "Let's just move on," he muttered. Obama looked at the hand for a long moment. Then he shook his head gently. "Moving on doesn't mean pretending nothing happened," he said quietly. "It means learning something from it. I hope someday you do." He turned and walked toward the door. No raised voice, no dramatic exit, just quiet, steady steps, echoing through the most powerful office in the world. As he reached the doorway, Obama paused. Without looking back, he said, "The truth doesn't need permission to exist, Donald. It just does." Then he left. The door closed behind him with a dull click that sounded louder than any argument. Trump stood frozen, his hand still hanging in the air. The room once full of tension and noise now felt empty and cold. For the first time that day, Trump didn't have a comeback. And maybe deep down, he knew he'd lost this round not to a man's title, but to his truth. The heavy door of the Oval Office closed with that quiet click, but the sound echoed through the White House like a bell. For a moment, no one moved. The aides standing along the wall exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if they should speak or slip away unnoticed. Trump remained still behind his desk. His hand slowly curled into a fist before resting on the polished wood. His face was flushed, his breathing uneven. But his eyes, they told a different story. For the first time that day, there was no anger in them. There was confusion, and maybe somewhere deep down, a flicker of doubt. He lowered himself back into the chair, staring at the desk for a long time. The room that had once felt like his stage now felt smaller, quieter, as if Obama's calm had drained all the noise from it. One sentence lingered in the air like smoke. "The truth doesn't need permission to exist." Trump turned his head toward the window. The late afternoon sun was fading, and outside the American flag fluttered in the wind. For a fleeting moment he looked almost reflective. Almost. Then his expression hardened again. "Get me my schedule," he muttered to an aide. But even as he said it, his voice lacked its usual bite. The meeting that was supposed to humiliate Barack Obama had ended in silence, and that silence said everything. Down the hall, Obama walked with steady steps, each one echoing softly on the polished floor. Secret Service agents followed a respectful distance behind, but no one said a word. He didn't look angry. He didn't look smug. He looked calm and a little tired, like a man who had done what needed to be done and didn't have to say another word about it. As he reached the main corridor, a staffer waiting by the door asked quietly, "Sir, are you okay?" Obama smiled faintly. "I'm fine," he said, "but I hope the country will be too." Those words carried a quiet weight, the kind that stays with you long after you hear them. He stepped outside into the evening air. The sky was streaked with gold and orange, a peaceful glow that felt almost symbolic. Obama stopped for a second, looking up at the flag above him. He didn't speak, but his expression said it all. Pride, patience, and the kind of sadness that only comes from loving something enough to be disappointed by it. He knew the conversation inside that office wasn't just about him. It was about truth, about leadership, about what happens when power forgets its purpose. He took a slow breath, and for a brief moment, you could almost imagine what was running through his mind, how leadership had changed, how politics had turned into performance, how truth, simple, honest truth, had become something people now argued over. He knew people would hear about that meeting one way or another. Some would twist it. Some would deny it happened. But it didn't matter, because truth doesn't depend on who believes it. It just is. Later that evening, in a quiet interview setting, Obama was asked about leadership. There was no mention of the meeting, but his expression, calm, composed, thoughtful, hinted at everything unsaid. "Leadership isn't about being the loudest in the room," he said, smiling faintly. "It's about being the one who listens when no one else wants to." The interviewer nodded, waiting as Obama continued. "It's easy to throw insults," he said softly. "It's easy to spread rumors, but it takes strength to stay calm when others lose control. Real strength doesn't come from shouting. It comes from standing on truth, especially when it's hard." He leaned back, his voice reflective, like a teacher passing down a lesson. "When I was in office, he said I made mistakes. I own them, because that's what the job demands, honesty, even when it's uncomfortable." He paused for a moment before adding, "Integrity isn't about how you act when the cameras are on. It's about who you are when no one's watching." Those words hung in the air, simple, clear, powerful, and somewhere in that truth was the echo of what had unfolded earlier that day. Obama hadn't needed to win by shouting. He'd let the truth do the talking, and it had spoken louder than anything else could. As night settled over Washington, the lights in the White House glowed softly against the dark sky. Inside, Trump's team worked to move past what had happened, pretending it had just been another meeting. But those who had been in that room would remember it differently. They'd remember the silence after Obama's words. They'd remember the way Trump's hand hung in the air, unanswered. And they'd remember the calm that followed, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Because that's what truth does. It doesn't roar. It resonates. Later that night in his private study, Obama was said to have written a single sentence in his notebook. It read, "Power fades. Truth doesn't." That's what he had tried to show not just to Trump, but to anyone watching. That leadership isn't about humiliation or pride. It's about humility. It's about standing your ground without lowering yourself. And that's how he left the White House that evening, without applause, without cameras, without headlines. He had come face to face with noise and answered it with quiet strength. In the end, that's what made his comeback unforgettable. Not because he shouted louder, but because he stood taller. And as the story closes, one question remains, one that lingers long after the words fade. What does leadership really mean to you? Is it power, popularity, control, or is it honesty, even when no one's watching? Because as Obama showed that day in the White House, truth doesn't need to fight. It just needs to stand.